This video looks at a collection of phonics games that I find to be particularly engaging for children. Not all of the games are appropriate for every kind of classroom, but there should be something for everybody, especially for teachers who like to experiment a bit. Statues. This is a traditional children's party game. The children dance around to music, and when the music stops, they need to freeze. This game can also be used in various ways in the English class. One way to do this is for the teacher to write a phonics family on the board while the children are dancing. When the music stops, they need to freeze in the pose of a word from that phonics family, and then call out the word. Hopscotch. If you don't know the game, you can see how to play in the description below this video. Hopscotch normally involves writing numbers on the ground in a hopscotch grid, but in a classroom, it is generally not practical to write on the ground. It is sometimes possible to put cards on the ground. An alternative is to have carpet tiles or something similar on the ground, and for the grid to be duplicated on the board. The grid on the board can have letters, words, or pictures in each square, which a child identifies as she hops onto carpet tiles. Battleships. In a popular version of this game, there is a row of cards, and one child starts at one end of the row, and the other child starts at the other end. They race to identify each card or say a word or sentence triggered by that card. When the children meet in the middle, they do rock, scissors, paper, and the child who loses returns to her end of the row and starts again. The aim is to reach the other end of the row. I have serious problems with this version of the game. It is often the more confident, more outgoing child, or the child who is better at identifying the cards, who wins the game, and the child who needs the most support, who loses. I think the game needs to be modified so that winning or losing simply depends on whoever wins rock, scissors, paper. One way to do this is for the children not to race, but to move at the same pace. They move one card towards each other and perform the appropriate language task for the card, with your hints or help if necessary. The other rules are the same. When they meet, they do rock, scissors, paper, and the loser goes back to her end of the row. Another way is not to use a row, but to make the cards into a race track. Before each turn, the children do rock, scissors, paper. If a child wins with rock, she moves 3 cards. With scissors, 2 cards. And with paper, 1 card. Contortion. This game is played like Twister. There are letter cards on the floor. The children look at a picture card and call out instructions to a child who needs to touch the letters one by one to spell the word. One way to play is for the children who are gathered round to decide whether the child should touch a letter with their left leg or right hand. Another way is to have 2 piles of cards that the children draw from. Before each instruction, the children gathered round first draw a left or right card from one pile, and then a card from a pile of cards that indicates a part of the body. Most of the cards will be for things like hand, leg, or finger, but there will be some special cards for other parts of the body, like ear or big toe. Minesweeper. There are various ways to play this game. One way is to divide the class into 2 teams and draw a grid on the board with letters or words in it. The teams take turns to read the letters or words. You can have a secret copy of the grid that indicates the location of mines. If a team chooses a word with a mine, there can be some kind of penalty, such as losing a point. It can be fun to have sound effects as well. If the children are familiar with the Minesweeper game, the children can play as a whole class, not in teams. And you can write numbers in squares in a grid to indicate whether a square a child chooses touches squares with 1, 2, or 3 mines in them. In this case, the aim is for the children to clear the minefield. Once the children know the game, it also works well in pairs or groups, with children taking turns to lay the minefield. Or it can be played with the whole class, with children laying the minefield and writing numbers in the grid on the board. Baseball and soccer grid games. First, let's look at the baseball variation. Draw a grid like this on the board. It doesn't have to be phonics families in the grid as in this example. It could also be letters or words. Divide the class into 2 teams and ask each team to choose which baseball team they would like to be. One child from one team then either chooses one of the squares or throws something at the grid. Personally, I almost always use a sticky ball that the children throw at the board. The child who chose or hit a square then reads whatever is in the square and takes a board marker. Her team then call out words from that phonics family. The game rule I usually use is for the child to write 3 words from the phonics family on the board. I always make sure she succeeds with the help of her team or my hints. She or I then mark either a circle or X in the square on the grid, according to what team she belongs to, and give her team 1 run. The turn then passes to the other team, who do the same thing. The aim is for a team to get a row of 3 squares in any direction. If the children are throwing something at the board, a child gets a home run for her team if she makes a row of 3 with her first throw, 3 runs if it is with her second throw, and 2 runs if it is with her third throw. Each time she doesn't hit a square that doesn't already have an X or a circle in it, it is 1 strike out, so she has 3 chances. Some squares later in the game may complete 2 or even 3 rows of 3, so scores are doubled or tripled. The same game can be played with a soccer theme. The children choose their favourite soccer teams and play the game in much the same way, with a different scoring system. They don't get goals each time they read a word, just when they complete a row of 3. In the same way as with baseball, some squares later in the game may complete 2 or even 3 rows of 3, so they get 2 or 3 goals. Probably the most important part of this game is when a child is writing 3 words. When she does that, the whole team are thinking back to previous lessons, so are constantly switching between the current lesson and previous lessons, and so deepening their learning. See the How Children Learn 4 video for why it is so important to interlink new knowledge with prior knowledge. Battleships. I usually play this game with animals, not ships, and it can be used for other themes too, but most people know this game as Battleships. Each child has 2 identical grids, one to place her own animals, and the other to mark the location of the other child's animals when she discovers where they are. Each animal or ship has a fixed size and shape. For example, an ant might just take up 1 square. A hippo might be 6 squares, 3 by 2. Divide the children into pairs, either with a screen between each pair or have them turn back to back. Each child places her animals or ships wherever she likes in one of the grids in front of her. The children take turns trying to guess where the other child's animals are. For example, one child says, tree, what is it? The other child may say, it's a frog, or nothing, if the square is blank. If the child guesses successfully, she marks where the other child's animals are located on her second grid, and continues choosing squares until the answer is nothing, and the turn passes to the other child. The winner is the first child to find all the other child's animals. Chopstick Spelling. Choose a few vocabulary pictures. I usually use 5 or 6 pictures. Dictate the sounds in the words in a random order. Each child writes the sounds on a piece of paper and then tears up her piece of paper into little pieces, tearing around each sound she has written. Divide the class into teams, unless it is small. The children from one team put all their pieces of paper in one pile and mix them up. Put the vocabulary pictures that you dictated in a place where all the children can see them. Give each of the teams chopsticks. The children on one team take turns picking up one of the pieces of paper with the chopsticks and racing to a table in another part of the room. The objective is for their team to try to spell each of the pictures letter by letter. It is fun to have music playing in the background while they are playing. It is also fun if you omit 1 or 2 of the sounds in the words when you dictate them. This creates another puzzle for the children to solve, which they usually do by writing the missing sounds on pieces of paper. In these 5 videos, I have tried to share a lot of the games that I have found effective when teaching phonics to children. I hope you find them helpful.